You've probably been told that your multiple passions and interests are a problem, that you should just pick one thing and stick to it, one career, one passion, one path. And as somebody who has multiple passions and interests and is a self-proclaimed modern Renaissance woman, I've definitely heard this from both external sources, but also internally, like battling with that in your mind. But what if this advice is incomplete at best and actually just wrong at worst? What if your multiple passions and interests are actually the key to success, fulfillment, creativity, especially in today's world? Today, I want to give you 7 reasons why being a multi-passionate person isn't a flaw, but is actually your unique advantage when handled correctly. And by the end of this video, you'll see why the world needs more of us and not fewer. So let's just get into it. Reason number 1 is that hyper-specialization is not the only route to success. This world is set up in a way that leans towards neatly categorizing us, putting us in well-defined boxes where it's clear what you do, what's your role in this world. If we're being honest, it's easy for organization, bureaucracy, and for large systems to function. And it's understandable where this model has come from, especially when we consider some of the jobs that were previously done in manufacturing and the Industrial Revolution, which were almost quite one-dimensional in their nature. You had a role along almost like an assembly line of work, and it made sense then for you to hyper-specialize and become very good at that one thing. But technology has changed everything. It's changed both the way that we work and the way that we acquire information. Technology has been trending towards removing manual repetitive tasks away from humans and freeing up our time for more creative endeavors, things that require us to tap into parts of ourselves that aren't so easily replicated by technology. AI and machine learning is just the latest rendition of this, encroaching on more intellectual work though versus manual labor. Things like coding and design have been impacted, especially if the work has been well documented online, and so AI can ingest that information and give us often quite good outputs. But as great as AI and technology is at performing singular tasks really well or with well-defined boxes, it's not as good as making connections across domains, that thing that humans do so well, and also infusing our own experiences, things that aren't documented online for AI or tech to consume, right? Those one-to-one interactions or group conversations that you have that spark ideas, right? The fact that you were doing some painting over here and maybe you was investing in your engineering passion, but also the natural world, and bringing these ideas together in unique and novel ways, that is something that is still very unique to human beings and is extraordinarily valuable on a path to success. Those of us who are spending time investing in this way of approaching the world and intaking information are primed to take advantage of these opportunities, right? As some of you may know, I'm an engineer and content creator, clearly, but I also am into public speaking and painting, and having allowed myself to dive deep into those sorts of passions and interests, develop them, and make new connections, I'm primed to take advantage of the opportunities in front of me now with the technology that I have, right? With the ability to distribute information and my ideas, on a platform like this with millions, if not billions of users, but also to take that information and the way that I think and the skills that I've been developing into my career as an engineer. It changes the way that I navigate the space and interviews and the work. I bring things that other engineers don't because of it. My success is largely tied to the multiple passions and interests that I have been building and diving deeply into. Multi-passionate individuals are often primed to take advantage of changes in the environment, whilst those who are hyper-specialized can often be left behind. Think about times when there's been a huge shift in technology and it has changed the way that individuals have worked, maybe in farming or manufacturing, or even in, intellectual or tech work. Those people who are very hyper-specialized, who haven't been well-versed in learning and acquiring new skills across domains, can often find themselves pretty much stranded and often out of the loop. And it's actually a reflection of something that happens in the natural world, where a species can become so hyper-specialized, so good at performing one thing or in one environment, that if there is a shift in the environment, they literally become extinct. Having that in mind frames, I think, the way that you see your multiple passions and skills and the characteristics that you are developing. It is actually primed for success when done well. Reason number 2 is that there are multiple configurations of your passions and interests and skills. For some reason, I think people believe that when they hear multiple passions and skills, the individual is doing all of them at the same intensity, at the same level all of the time. And that's just not true. And it's not a necessity of having multiple passions. It is completely possible to adjust the configuration of your passions and skills to get the desired outcome you want, or to match and align with the path that you're on at that particular time. I have spoken before about about at the beginning of my tech journey, right, and becoming an engineer and transitioning from geography into the tech space, that particular passion, interest, and skill had a lot of time devoted to it, right? That configuration looked very different. I wasn't painting at that point. I wasn't like maybe spending as much time in my content creation, although I still was posting. So it was still a bubble that existed there with engineering, but the other things were smaller. They were less of a focus. That doesn't mean they had to be completely removed. I still read books, but maybe not to the intensity I did. As the seasons shift, the focuses change, and you realize, I need to go a little bit deeper into one, or I'm quite interested in seeing how these two fuse together. So let's focus in on these. These things can change and they can evolve. And actually, when you find the configurations that work with you and you tune into these, you can make them work for you and what it is that you are trying to achieve. Reason number 3 is that having multiple passions and interests and exploring them actually leans into human nature. We are very curious animals, right? We are interested in taking in information about our environment, processing it, making something new with it, or allowing ourselves to thrive in our environment because of that information, right? Always seeking out new connections. We literally have one of the largest brain to body mass ratios of any other species. Like when you look at it, the size and the proportion of our brains and the amount of energy it consumes, the intensity of our neural networks reflects a complexity that you would expect to see in our lives, reflected in the passions and the interests that we explore. So actually, your multiple passions and interests isn't you working against your human nature, it's leaning into it. You mix this with the fact that we are living in a time where we have access to billions, if not trillions, of pieces of information at our fingertips, that you can lean into that natural curiosity, and you have the mechanisms, you have the tools, you have the information to dive deeper and become proficient and even master these skills and these passions and these interests. So why not take advantage of it? Gone are the days where you could only rely on formal education or finding someone in your immediate environment to teach you about a particular passion or interest or skill. That is gone. You have access to so much, even for free, just on the internet. Books, YouTube videos, blogs, articles, all of this at your fingertips. Reason number 4 is that a lot of the people that we look up to who drive innovation have multiple passions and interests. They have multiple skills and they bring them together in interesting, novel ways. Now, I'm not saying that a lot of these people didn't start in part quite specialized and mastering one thing before layering new things on top. And I'm not even saying that isn't a path that you should take, because that can be very useful in getting some baseline skills, establishing, resources so that you can dive deep into your multiple passions and interests. But people who are really moving the needle forward weren't just doing one thing really well forever. They were actually layering new things on top. Whatever you think about these individuals that I'm about to name on a personal level, their impact on culture, on art, on engineering, on a wealth of things can't really be disputed. Think about someone like Steve Jobs, who spoke about the importance of going to the calligraphy classes he did and learning about design and typography, and how that influenced how Apple designed their computers and, the screens and the kind of text that you saw, the experience. So it wasn't just that he was a computer scientist or somebody who was well versed and understood hardware and software to an extent. It was also that he had dived deeper into that other passion. He had gone to different classes, explored different ways of thinking about design and about the world, and then infused that to make one of the biggest brands, a brand that quite literally has a revenue that rivals countries, that has people running out to stores, queuing up outside stores for a phone that arguably looks a lot like the same one that came out a year ago. But that kind of influence that he had in that early days of building Apple, it came from multiple passions and interests and skills and fusing them. Another example would be Rihanna, who I speak about a lot on this channel, but started off as a musician, but nowadays fuses her interest in the arts and the culture and business, but also in diversifying the type of people that are interacting with her products, from beauty, from fashion, from skincare to hair care. Like, she is in a lot of things and fusing a lot of interest and her experiences, the type of people she's interacted with, her connection. She's making these new waves and driving change because of these multiple passions and interests and the multidimensional nature of her and her work. And then, of course, there's the original Renaissance man, if you would like, but Leonardo da Vinci, who wasn't just a painter and one of the most spectacular painters of his time, but was also an engineer. He also had interests in other forms of art and music. That his whole sketchbook and notebook was interrogated, and you see his designs for things that are more along the science and engineering route. And would his work have looked the same if he hadn't allowed himself to explore those different interests and, use his brain in those sorts of ways? Arguably not. right? Like all of these layer on top to form new ways of looking at even a very specialized skill that you have, because you bring all these things with you, and we've seen it time and time again. The fifth reason is that not every passion needs to be monetized. There's a belief that everything we do needs to be monetized, and needs to be monetized in a way that everybody else recognizes directly and immediately. But not everything needs a pound sign or a dollar sign attached to its head. It's okay to spend time working and investing in things that light you up, that energize you, that tap into different ways of your mind working, that encourage you to look at the world and seek out information in new ways. I, for one, don't monetize my painting. I don't sell my paintings or anything that I do in that context, but yet they have influenced the way that I see the world, the way that I intake information, even on plants. And when I'm in the natural world, I just came back from Iceland literally yesterday, and I tell you, the way that I intake that information is different through the lens of someone who has been, having to look into color theory and understanding the way that light impacts things. Like, my brain looks at things differently, and with each new skill that I have, the world becomes almost the lens through which I see it is different, and that's okay. Those things are exciting. Releasing yourself from the pressure to monetize everything directly and immediately allows you to dive deep into these passions and interests and allow them to form a part of you and your approach to the world. That being said, I know I just spoke about how it doesn't need to be monetized, but it's interesting to see how these things that you're doing actually impact the way you show up and things you do monetize. Like, I am pretty sure that my different layers and the things I'm interested in has heavily impacted the content that I create, the way that I show up here, which is monetized, right? I do get paid from YouTube and other sources. The sixth reason is that your multiple passions and interests make you a more interesting and dynamic individual. You are not just one career or one skill or one business. You are layered, and we like to interact with people often who are also layered, right? It's not that interacting with somebody who is hyper specialized and really just lives, breathes one thing is bad, because often you can have very thought-provoking and insightful conversations with people like that. But how much time do you spend around those sorts of people versus those who have layers to them? And even if they do have one thing they focus on, you can see how they are infusing the different parts of their lives into their interests, into their passion, into their career, and how they show up, how they basically talk to you, how they approach discussions, that open-mindedness, their ability to, again, speak to you in a way that connects with you based on your interests, your passion, and the way that you navigate life. That is brilliant for networking. I can tell you that for free. Like, having studied geography, which I always say study of the world, I touched on so many things there, impacted the way that I saw the world and saw networking and saw speaking to people, the type of conversations that I could have, the type of discussions that I could be involved in. The fact that I have traveled the world, that is one of my passions, my interest is traveling, has also impacted the way that I can communicate with people from a range of places, age groups, interests. Like, those sorts of things laid on top, I believe, have made me more dynamic, me more interesting, and able to navigate conversations with other human beings quite well. And so that's not to say that you're boring innately if you don't have multiple passions and interests, but... And the final reason is that I actually think the world is trending towards more multi-passionate living. A lot of people are miserable, right? They are living lives where they go to work, they perform a particular task, they drive home, then they scroll in order to kind of numb themselves from the life that they're living, and then they go to bed. And there seems to be not much more to it. There aren't many layers. There isn't a lot of dimension to the life that they are living. They're craving more. The monotony of life needs to be broken up. And in big part, that is to do with the complexity of us as human beings and the things that we crave from our life and meaning. We're no longer bound by geography or traditional careers or rigid paths. And a lot of us are able to see the way other people are living and being able to infuse their passions and interests in the life that they live. Communities are being built not around a single topic, but instead around a mindset, a framework, an approach to life. And so people will start to seek out ways that they can add layers to their life, that they can infuse their lives with passion and interest and skills in a way that works for them, even if it doesn't look like their neighbor or their brother or their sister, or their best friend or their husband or their wife. They'll look for this. And if you are somebody who has already been allowing yourself to explore these things, then I think you're ahead of the game. I think you are probably already building a life that is more fulfilling and that goes beyond the textbook approach to life and success. And so that's it. 7 reasons why I think being a multi-passionate individual is not a flaw, but instead a unique advantage when understood and placed correctly. If you enjoyed this video, then I definitely think you'll enjoy one of these around the screen where I talk about multiple passions and interests in a little bit more depth. And if you would like to sign up to the Renaissance letter, which is the newsletter that I have, then you're free to do so. The information is in the description. So I will see you in the next video.